He is not going to be here today.
Today is Monday, November the 27th. At this time, please stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Please pause for a moment of silence.
Good morning, Panthers. Welcome back from Thanksgiving break. I hope you are ready for a fun-filled week. Congratulations to our students of the week: Summer Bearden, Paisley Carter, Elijah McCamey, Janae Norwood. If those students will please come to the front office to get your picture taken. Students, just a reminder, it's very important that you're at school each day and on time for all classes. Make sure you get here. We've got to finish this semester strong. We do have end of course tests coming up and final exams. So we need to finish strong and earn all those high school credits. At Ridgeland High School, we expect all of our Panthers to hold the Panther Creed. I will be safe. I respect the learning environment. I respect others. I respect myself. Let's have another great day here at Ridgeland. Go Panthers.
Classroom, go ahead and open up, and we already have this week's current events. Mr. Earl is out. Remember, before the break, he told y'all his dad was not doing well, and he sent a message to us yesterday to let him know that he's probably going to have to deal with that. So I think he's planning on being back tomorrow, but we will let you know if that changes. We don't have any, but you can see. This is. Just make sure it stays in here, right? All right. Go ahead. We'll get CNN 10 going.
Can you stop that? You need what? Somebody name. Black office. I'm never wearing these
How Black Friday has changed.
Yeah, last year, it was a scam at Walmart. It was horrible.
Hello,
sunshine. Hope you have an awesome Thanksgiving break. It is November 27th, Motivation Monday, and to honor it, a quote from former South African president and social rights activist Nelson Mandela, who once said, "It always seems impossible until it is done." We start today with something that once may have seemed impossible for many of those affected by the conflict in the Middle East, but it has happened. In a breakthrough truce deal, Israel and Hamas agreed on a temporary pause in fighting and the first large-scale release of hostages and prisoners who were taken on October 7th. It began on Friday when 24 hostages left Gaza and 39 Palestinian women and minors were released from Israeli prisons. Over the weekend, we continued to see the emotional reunions of families who hadn't seen each other for weeks. Under a 4-day truce deal, Israel and Hamas agreed on the release of a total of 50 hostages from Gaza and 150 Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails. Now, we're going to zip on over to our next story of the day. In the U.S., Black Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving, is not what it used to be. Years ago, Black Friday shopping crazes could sometimes lead to stampedes, even injuries at stores. But now, American consumers' habits around the holiday shopping season have changed. Here's Jen Sullivan with the how and the why.
The mad discount dash associated with Black Friday appears to be slowing.
Clearly, the month of November has changed really since the pandemic.
More shoppers are looking to score deals online as many consumers gear up for Cyber Monday.
A pretty big shift from the Black Fridays I remember about a decade ago, where people would line up early outside the stores. Now people are shopping in their pajamas.
It's not just the convenience of shopping from home that has consumers scaling back on in-store shopping. Many retailers rolled out their discounts much earlier this year to entice people to spend sooner.
It actually started as early October and will go right till Christmas time.
Black Friday deals have already generated nearly $10 billion in online sales, according to Adobe Analytics. That's 7.5% more than a year ago. But Black Friday is only the penultimate attempt by retailers to ratchet up their sales. Today marks the final substantial day of holiday shopping deals, Cyber Monday, designed for online shoppers. Did you know that Cyber Monday is expected to generate a record $12 billion in sales, according to Adobe Analytics? Adobe says smartwatches, TVs, toys, and gaming products were the best-selling categories this year. They also saw a notable increase in shoppers who went for buy now, pay later options. 47% more Americans use this flexible payment method compared to last year. And while that may mean that they may end up paying a bit more because of interest, that works better for some. Now, pop quiz, hot shot. 10-second trivia. What is the oldest operating ballpark in Major League Baseball? Wrigley Field, Fenway Park, Dodger Stadium, or Yankee Stadium? Opening in 1912, Fenway Park with its iconic left field wall opened 2 years before Wrigley. Although baseball season might be over in the U.S., one of the sport's most iconic venues is still active in an unexpected way. As we celebrate our shared home this Call to Earth Day, CNN went to the city of Boston to take a look at an urban farm unlike any other, sitting above the front offices of the Boston Red Sox. Hours before the gates open on Red Sox game day in late August at Fenway Park in Boston, a different team is hard at work.
As these crops continue to come out, we'll plant in fall beans, we'll plant in lettuces.
This is Fenway Farms, a 5,000 square foot garden area on a section of rooftop at the oldest active Major League Baseball park in America.
You know, agriculture happens everywhere. We're just bringing it up off the ground and putting it up on the roof.
Chris Grallard is a farmer and the president of Green City Growers, which operates this farm and some 200 other locations, including at 40 Boston public schools. But none are as visible and perhaps surprising as Fenway Farms.
There's a desire for people to have more locally grown fresh produce and interact with the people who are growing and distributing that fresh produce. And I think when you have such high visibility like you do at a garden like this, people start to see that it's possible, and it can really be the seed to start the new revolution towards food system transformation.
The garden first opened in 2015. Recycled milk crates formed the raised planters.
These are fingerling type potatoes.
Irrigated by a special system that delivers the precise amount needed to each plant. The produce doesn't have to travel far, just a short walk to Chef Ron Abel and his team, operating the restaurants and concessions at Fenway.
Produce delivery. How you doing, buddy? Good to be seen, good to see you. Beautiful onions, right up, look at the size of those.
I have the best chef job in the city, well, actually, maybe the country, where I've got a rooftop garden that the food travels 100 feet, gets washed, and gets served to everybody. And then this dish that Sean's putting together is simple. Potatoes we harvested this morning, we've got purple potatoes, we've got fingerling potatoes, heirloom carrots of different colors, and he just steamed them lightly, and they get seasoned lightly.
Green City Growers estimates Fenway Farms reduces the need for produce to purchase at the venue by 20%.
Mostly, we look at quantities and what we can go through, and we also look at perishability. So there are challenges here, and we can't predict what Mother Nature's gonna give us.
Anything left over, along with what's harvested from a smaller designated area next to the main farm, is donated to a local food rescue and distribution organization called Lovin' Spoonfuls.
We can produce anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 pounds of fresh produce a year, depending on what we're growing. And so, the range of vegetables, asparagus to zucchini.
Making the iconic green of Fenway Park even greener. Today's story getting a 10 out of 10, The Great Escape. Shelley Betts from Georgia and her family were busy decorating their home for Christmas, and when it was time to clean up all the mess, their robot vacuum was nowhere to be found, until they found video evidence of the mysterious getaway. Here's Jeannie Most with more.
Roomba is supposed to work for you.
Alexa, can you tell Roomba to clean under the kitchen table?
But who knew a Roomba could turn the tables by disappearing?
We could not find him, and we looked under all the furniture.
Unbeknownst to Georgia resident Shelley Betts, Roomba headed out the front door they'd left open.
We were doing Christmas decorations in and out, and he escaped.
2 days later, Shelley's husband found him under a bunch of leaves. How far did he actually get?
To be honest, he didn't get very far.
Maybe 10 yards. It was after they found him that they looked back at their ring camera and witnessed his escape.
We were laughing hysterically.
So was the internet. A little Roomba that could. Now that's a clean getaway. Clean, but Roomba was a mess. He lost his padding and his brushes, though he still works.
He did his job. You know, he was doing what he was born to do.
So she saluted the runaway Roomba's escape by adding the George Michael classic. Freedom, freedom. Without Roomba, the family was left in a vacuum.
Shout out time now. We're showing love to Campbell Middle School in Smyrna, Georgia. Rise up. And the Panthers at Thomas W. Powell in Bethesda, Maryland. Keep shining, Miss Ivan and Nora. We see you. Thanks to all of you who have subscribed and commented on our CNN 10 YouTube page for your shout out request. Let's make Monday great and do this again tomorrow, shall we? I'm Corey Wire, and we are CNN 10. Hey, remember, let's put the phones away, the blankets need to be put up. Did
you guys find interesting this morning?
The robot running away. That was not interesting.
Potentially. But today we're not. And we gotta get through some more stuff, so we'll see if we can get back to the movie. But we'll get with the game plan here in a little bit. So the Roomba running away.
That was not interesting.
That was very interesting.
I'm like intrigued because I don't know about y'all, but like almost every house I see, usually, you know, there's like a lip, right?
Yeah.
You have to step up into the house. Roomba should just be like, oh, can't go that way. So, interested on that house plan. But what else?
The Fenway Farm.
I thought that was pretty cool.
I like how it's on the roof, and I like how everyone can see it, whenever they go by, because it makes more people look at it and, yeah, think, or it's more like it's influencing more people to realize that agriculture doesn't just have to be on the ground on a farm. Like, we can bring farms.
Yeah.
Or anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that you kind of have seen, like in big cities like New York and stuff like that, Boston, they'll have like little communities and they'll do that on top of like their apartment, where like they'll have like a community farm, like where they can grow stuff. But I mean, it's kind of cool to see the Red Sox go, we're not gonna outsource, we're just gonna grow our own food here, and then that's pretty cool. And you go to a game or a show and you're getting fresh food that was actually just harvested. That's pretty sweet. I don't think you're quite getting that at the old Braves. Anything else? I mean, I thought we're kind of seeing some positive change here with the war in Israel, right? That's promising.
My family says I can see spar for that one time, Mark, I think it's see spar.
Of course he would be late.
Thank you.
I didn't see him in forever.
No. We
Looks like
kind of
it's
discussed it. It's a
They
tricky
dropped
situation
three.
over there, and
When did you get mailed out? Last week.
I was actually listening to a podcast over the week that kind of was talking about it, and they said that it's just hard because usually when you see a conflict, you see the resolve, like how it can be resolved, you see it, but like with this, you're like, no one knows what the end game really is, because both sides are just so far off of what they want and what they're willing to concede. That's not really sure what the end game looks like. But we'll see. I'm sure we'll continue to hear about it. Anyone do anything fun over the break? Exciting? Eat some good food?
Yeah.
At least?
The puzzle we don't have the one.
Y'all just stay here? No one traveled to go see family?
All over North Carolina.
North Carolina?
Yeah.
What part?
I don't know that it was we went on to a mountain because we wanted to get our Christmas tree on Thanksgiving break, because that makes sense. Okay.
North Carolina?
Yes.
That was forced. We already have our Christmas tree up. I think we put it up like Tuesday or Wednesday last week. I was just like, I know, it was kind of weird because like everyone's doing Christmas early. Like they did a Christmas, like they've already had like 3 or 4 Christmas parades. I'm like, it's Thanksgiving though.
Yeah, it's still November.
But yesterday, yesterday was the only time I have not been to a food city except for yesterday. Yeah, I wasn't a food city. Walmart maybe.
Anyone know how much?
No.
I can look.
Can you look, Bradley?
All right.
Or Brody? I'm so sorry, I called you Bradley.
Alright, guys.
Wait, is that
Well-
something right there?
So today, we're gonna learn about the new, I cannot talk today. The judiciary side of the government. What? I guess let's go, hey, we're in class now, alright?
You show me the scoreboard. Affirmative.
Alright. Federal court system. So today we're gonna cover the standards. SSCG 13, demonstrate knowledge of the operation of the judicial branch of the government. Describe the selection and approval process of federal judges. Explain the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, federal courts, and state courts. What do you guys know about this already?
It's branch.
It is a branch of the government. What's the other two?
Legislative
They interpret laws.
Executive. What's legislative do? What were they in charge of?
Bro, I don't remember.
They make it.
Making the laws, right? Who makes the laws?
You say who makes it?
Who's in charge of making laws? Who is in this right here? We hear president, what are you thinking? Executive, right? Executive, I'm the head, I'm the charge, I'm top dog. Legislative, House of Representatives, Senate.
Which one enforces the law?
Hmm?
Which one enforces the law?
What do you mean by enforces?
When we do a little noise, I forgot which one, but he said something. He didn't branch enforces the law.
This right here comes up with the signing of the bills and kind of put it into play. I mean, you have, like, the police are there to enforce laws. If there's a challenge, you go to court, right? If you get arrested, you go to court, and they act out, did you break the law, did you not? Right? Executive, president, vice president is also over here. But the president, he usually will, or she, will come up with like kind of like their agenda, what they want to get done. House of Representatives or the Senate come up with the bill, introduce it, vote on it. That kind of works out. They pass it to the president, he signs it in, or vetoes. But now we'll go to judicial branch and we'll talk about what they do. So, their role is to interpret and define the law. This involves hearing individual cases and deciding how the law should be applied. Remember, federalism, there are federal courts in the federal law and state courts and state laws, right? So if you're driving down McFarland and you get a speeding ticket, I'm not having to go to a federal court, right? Just go to the city court of Rossville, because that's their jurisdiction. They actually were in charge of that. Alright. The judiciary is simply the judicial branch of the government, which includes the court system and the judges. The president appoints federal judges, and the Senate Judiciary Committee holds hearings to evaluate candidates and sends its recommendations to the floor for a final vote. So again, here's our checks and balances, all right? The president says, I want this guy to be on the Supreme Court. They then review, kind of do their investigating skills, see what they like, vote on it. So the president can then get trumped if the House and Senate can't come to an agreement, go back, you have to pick somebody else. So the appointment of judges, president nominates someone to become a judge, step one. Senate majority vote confirms, Senate approves it. And then, Supreme Court judges, unlike everybody else, right? Everybody else has term limits. President serves for how long?
4 years.
4 years. If I get elected to the Senate, how long am I in office?
Judges, please excuse this interruption. At this time, anybody on planning, we have our EOC training in the media center. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
All right, how long are you in the Senate for?
6 years.
6 years. House of Representatives.
2.
You get selected to be judge, life.
Life?
Yep.
Without parole?
Bro, my father had served that. What, you black Jamaican father?
All right, so when a judge retires, so you can decide to retire, dies or is removed from his or her position, a vacancy appears and must be filled. There are 7 steps to filling this. The White House consults the state in order to find out who they should appoint. Candidates are then vetted, so they go through a background check to make sure that there's nothing bad going on or anything like that. Nominations finally made. The Senate committee conducts a hearing and candidates ask many questions. They basically are put on trial kind of thing. And then the committee votes. If that person gets enough votes, a full floor vote is scheduled. And then if the full floor votes yay, they can get enough votes there, they are confirmed. So, where do court jurisdictions come from? Do you guys know what jurisdiction is? Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Negative.
So, example, I said if you're on McFarland and you get a speeding ticket, that's Rossville PD's jurisdiction. If I'm in Fort Oak, can Rossville do anything to me? Why not?
Because they're not involved.
That I'm out of their jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is just areas that they are deemed that you have control, so that works for the courts as well. So if you are a resident of Walker County, you can one day pop up and get a letter saying that you gotta go to the court to go serve as a jury member because you're in Walker County. You're not gonna get one to go to Catoosa County. Why? Because you don't live in Catoosa County, right? Now, if you live in Catoosa County, you will never go to Rossville or Walker County to be one. So it is the same thing. The courts are split up. It's kind of like, this is my world where I do it. So in the federal level, you'll have districts and zones, and if you have to go to a federal court, this is your court you're assigned to. And it all leads to the Supreme Court, which is in charge of it all. They're the end all be all. Alright? So, where they get all this from, Article 3 of the Constitution creates one Supreme Court. So like I said, that is the top. There is nothing over that. No one rules over them. And such inferior courts that Congress creates. So Congress was in charge of creating those districts and zones. So Congress creates everything that's underneath the Supreme Court. So the federal court system is a pyramid with 3 levels. The bottom is district courts, middle is appeals court, and then the top is the United States Supreme Court. So when you guys covered Georgia law, did y'all kind of talk about how the state level is kind of the same, right? if you go to court, you're gonna go to the lower level, right? This is where you first go ahead. Somebody at the door. So, district court is the lowest level in federal court. There are 94 judicial districts in the 50 states and territories. No appellate jurisdiction, so they do not see appeals. And this is the original jurisdiction for most cases. So like I said, this is where I go, plead the case. If I lose, and I think that I was wrong in losing that case, I can form an appeal. Courts of appeal. So this is the intermediate level. There's 12 regional circuits, including DC. No original jurisdiction, strictly appeals. You guys got what that is? We're on the same page here? Appeals court?
Yeah.
Alright, now, if that doesn't go the right way, you can then go and you have the Supreme Court, highest court in the federal system. There's 9 justices meeting in Washington, D.C. Appeals jurisdiction through salutary process, and then limited original jurisdiction over some cases. Some cases that are big enough, they will skip this and go straight to here. Those are usually high-end cases that are dealing with like our Bill of Rights, and if we feel like those are being pushed on, they'll go to the Supreme Court. And that's, remember when we were talking about laws, when we pulled up court cases to support where those rights were involved? That's where the Supreme Court really plays a role in that. Alright, so district courts. All states have at least one where trials are held and lawsuits are begun. For all federal cases, district courts have original jurisdiction. Here, criminal and civil cases, only courts that involve witnesses and juries. Court of Appeals, intermediate level, review decisions of the lower courts. Don't decide guilt or innocence, but whether the original trial was fair. Most appeals are final. Cases can be sent back to lower courts for review. Parties can ask the Supreme Court to review the case. And the Supreme Court, highest federal court in the U.S., the court of last resort. Decisions cannot be appealed. Has both appellate and original jurisdiction. Has power of judicial review. Has 9 justices, 8 associate justices, and 1 chief. Again, if your case ever makes it to the Supreme Court, that decision's final. There is no arguing it. It is set. So we covered this. What is a jurisdiction? The authority of a court to hear, try, and decide a case. There are 4 types: exclusive, concurrent, original, and appellate. Exclusive, only federal court has authority to hear, state court cannot. Concurrent, allows certain types of cases to be tried in either federal or state. Original, authority to hear the cases for the first time. Trials are conducted, evidence is presented, and juries/judges decide the outcome. Federal district courts and the Supreme Court, in certain cases, have original jurisdiction. Appellate courts that hear reviews or appeals of decisions from lower courts, federal courts of appeals, and the Supreme Court have this.
Okay.
Against Obamacare. Cases involving treaties, which are by definition federal laws. These are pretty rare and really interesting. Cases involving the U.S. Constitution. For example, a case concerning freedom of religion. And cases where the U.S. government is a party to the litigation. Hi, I'm Craig, and this is Crash Course Government and Politics. As fans of our series know, here at Crash Course, we believe in hierarchy. First at the top, you got me. And then there's John Green, and Stan, and Brandon, and Zalea, and a bunch of independent contractors. Wait, I'm an independent contractor. Well, I'm still at the top. Anyway, then the rest of it's hurdles all the way down. Except at the bottom. There's an eagle. Anyway, it's the strict adherence to hierarchy that makes CCHQ run like a well-oiled machine. The same can be said for the U.S. court system. As you probably remember, if you're a smart rememberer of things, the American court system is hierarchical, which means any discussion of it cries out for a visual representation. Thought bubble, like Drake, will start from the bottom. The trial courts have original jurisdiction. When you realize that there are 50 states, each with its own court system, you shouldn't be surprised that the vast majority of cases start out in state courts. Of course, most cases never get to court at all. The vast majority of disputes, criminal and civil, are settled outside of court. How is that for efficiency? On the federal side, the trial courts are the U.S. district courts. There are 94 of them, with 663 judges, more or less. Sometimes in civil cases, a plaintiff, the person bringing the case, will have a choice about whether to bring that case in state or federal court. But you can only start in the district courts if your case meets certain important criteria. Almost all criminal cases start in state courts. So if you don't like the result in the trial court, and you have a reasonable claim that there was something procedurally wrong with the case or the way the law was applied, you can bring an appeal. Notice that if you start in state courts, you usually have more chances for appeal because most states have 2 levels of appellate courts, and the federal system has 1. Appeals courts can refuse to hear appeals, and if they do, you're done. One thing to remember, the loser can always try to appeal, even if that loser was the state that failed in its prosecution. Federal appeals courts are called circuit courts, and there are 12 of them distributed regionally throughout the U.S. You might guess that the region where your case is heard matters, and you'd be right. Judges in the 9th Circuit, which includes California and Oregon, tend to be more liberal than judges in the 5th Circuit. Federal appeals are usually heard by panels of 3 judges, while trials in the district court are before a single judge. There are 4 scenarios where the federal courts have original jurisdiction, and in all cases, they must be brought in a district court. They are cases where the law at issue is a federal law, like a claim against Obamacare. Cases involving treaties, which are by definition federal laws. These are pretty rare and really interesting. Cases involving the U.S. Constitution, for example, a case concerning freedom of religion. And cases where the U.S. government is a party to the litigation. The other type of case that can go into federal court is one involving more than one state where there's more than $70,000 at issue. This makes sense because if the parties in dispute are in different states, they might not even agree where to have the trial, and federal judges are supposed to be more impartial than state judges. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So thoughtful. So bubbly. If you read the news and pay attention to legal cases, most of what you see are lower court decisions, at least until the spring when the Supreme Court starts handing down decisions. These are the ones that tend to make it into the history books and that you may have even heard of. But how does a case get to the Supreme Court, Craig? Well, I will answer that for you. That's my job. Most of the time, the Supreme Court has appellate jurisdiction. In fact, it's the final court of appeals. If you lose there, you really lost. When the court hears a case, it's called judicial review. There are, however, circumstances when the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction and can act like a trial court. So it's a good thing that most of the justices are, in fact, lawyers, although there's no constitutional requirement that they need to be. The court has original jurisdiction in cases between the U.S. and a state, cases between 2 or more states, cases involving foreign ministers or ambassadors, and cases brought by citizens of one state against citizens of another state or against a foreign country. What do these cases have in common? The main thing is that you can't imagine there being a single state where they could happen. This is especially true in cases involving foreign officials. And then there are my favorite Supreme Court cases, crimes committed on the high seas. That's right, the Supreme Court can exercise original jurisdiction over pirates. This is not as weird as it sounds because crimes on the high seas, by definition, have not happened in any state. So where are you going to have the trial? Most of the time, cases that make it to the Supreme Court are there on appeal. In order for the court to exercise its appellate jurisdiction, the case must raise a federal question. For example, one involving due process or equal protection or an important federal statute. If you don't know what those terms mean, don't worry. We'll get to them. Here's the thing, though. The Supreme Court doesn't hear a lot of cases. It doesn't want to. And I don't want to either. I understand. They also can't. And it's not just because because most of the justices are kind of old. It's because there are only 9 of them, and they get requests to review about 8,000 cases a year. Out of these, they actually hand down about 80 decisions. So they have decision rules to weed out the cases that they don't want to hear. The first one is that there has to be a case or controversy, which means that you can't request the court to review whether or not a law is unconstitutional before it has gone into effect. There has to be an actual injury first. Another way of saying this is that the Supreme Court will not issue advisory opinions, speculating on whether or not a law might violate the Constitution. The second hurdle a potential Supreme Court litigant has to get over is called standing. Oh, that sounds terrible. I wouldn't want to be standing. No, this means that in order to bring a case, the parties must have a substantial stake in the outcome, which usually means an actual injury. Lack of standing is one reason that the court has refused cases about same-sex marriage brought by opposite-sex married people. The court will also refuse to hear a case that is moot. Mootness, which is a real word, I promise, I'm reading it on a teleprompter, means that the case no longer requires a resolution, say because one of the parties is dead. The flip side of mootness is ripeness. If a potential injury has yet to occur, the case is not ripe. It's like a hard avocado. Your guacamole, not gonna be very good. It's best not to be too anxious about bringing your case. Most of the time you can wait, except in cases like Bush v. Gore, where we kind of needed an outcome so a new president could move into the White House. There's also a vague decision rule called the political question doctrine. In some cases, the court would rather that the executive or legislative branch handle the issue and not get involved. There are certain cases that the court will almost always take, even though all things being equal, they'd rather not. When the circuit courts have reached different or conflicting conclusions on the same issue, what's known as a circuit split, the court will usually hear the case to resolve the confusion. The court will also almost always hear a case where the federal government itself initiated the appeal. Finally, the Supreme Court will usually take a case that has a clear constitutional question, like one involving freedom of speech or religion, although there are sometimes constitutional issues that they feel are settled or they just don't want to deal with. For a long time, for example, the court didn't hear gun control cases, and nowadays they don't usually take obscenity cases. Okay, so that's the structure of the court system and how a case does, or usually doesn't, make it to the Supreme Court. What we haven't really discussed is what happens when a case does make it to the Supreme Court. We'll show you that next time when we take a shortcut to the Supreme Court by suing the ambassador to Switzerland for making such delicious chocolate. It's making me unhealthy. Thanks for watching. See you next time. We're not actually going to sue this one. Crash Course Government and Politics is produced in association with PBS Digital Studios. Support for Crash Course Government comes from Vocal. Vocal supports nonprofits that use technology and media to advance social equity. Learn more about their mission and initiatives at vocal.org.
All right, guys, get our heads up. Come on. One more Ed puzzle, and then we will get to what we're doing today, class. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Craig, and this is Crash Course Civics, and today we're going to look at the basics of a system that affects all our lives, the law. And no, we're not going to be talking about the laws of thermodynamics. That's Hank's show, though we will be bringing the heat. The law affects you even if you never committed a crime, because there's so much more to the legal system than just criminal justice. And even though we're going to focus mainly on courts, the law is everywhere. If you don't believe me, read the user license on your next new piece of software, or if you fly anywhere, read the back of your plane ticket. Hopefully it won't be more entertaining than what you're watching now, but that's examples of the law.
What example of the law do we see frequently in our everyday lives, especially regarding technology? Miranda rights? Terms and conditions? What are we gonna go with?
Last one.
Alright.
Yeah, I can't say this.
While we're at it, what's our Miranda rights? No, Miranda rights.
Oh, it's a rights to Miranda.
No, we kind of covered it, but you guys should hear it. Before you get arrested, the cop has to read you your Miranda rights. What are those rights? What does the cop say?
You have the right to remain silent.
Remain silent.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. You have the
I couldn't heard the first line before.
You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot
Those are your Miranda rights.
They don't say it nicely. They didn't give you your Miranda rights right there.
No, they just arrested me.
Yeah,
That's why I was in there the whole week.
They yelled at me like right in my ear. Like they smacked me.
But your Miranda rights are those rights that you have if you're ever arrested.
Like this. Listen up.
In general, courts have three basic functions, only one of which you probably learned about in your history class. The first thing that courts do is settle disputes. In pre-modern...
Remember from classes, when a court settles a dispute between two people, this is called a civil case or a criminal case? Civil case.
Pre-modern history, which is way easier to understand than postmodern history, kings performed this function, but as states got bigger and more powerful, it became much easier to have specialized officials decide important issues, like who owned the fox you caught on someone else's land, or what does the fox say, which was disputed a lot back then. The second thing that courts do is probably the one you heard about in school, or on television, or perhaps while studying for the standardized test, and that's interpret the laws. This becomes increasingly important when you actually try to read laws, or when you realize that legislators are often not as careful as they might be when writing laws in the first place. Take a look at the Affordable Care Act. There are a few famous careless errors in that. Finally, courts create expectations for future actions. This is very important if you want to do business with someone. If you know that you'll be punished for cheating a potential business client, you're less likely to do it. Still, you might, because there are a lot of jerks out there who would. Are you one of them? Don't be. At the same time, if you know that...
Yeah, don't be a jerk.
There we go. Don't be a jerk.
Know that people will be punished for cheating you, you're more likely to do business. And it's courts that create the expectation that business will be conducted fairly. Interpreting the laws can help this too, since the interpretations are public and they set expectations that everyone can understand and know what the law means and how it applies, and then world peace. No more law breaking ever. The first thing to remember about courts in the U.S. is that most legal action, if it occurs in court at all, occurs in state court. And it's...
According to Craig, where are most court cases heard?
State
courts.
And if it occurs at night, it occurs in night court. Because this is mainly a series about federal government and not Indiana government or sitcoms about court in New York, I'm going to focus mainly on the federal court system, which has four main characteristics. One, the federal court system is separate from the other branches of government. The executive can do the job, just like kings used to, but we have separation of powers, so we don't have to be at the mercy of kings. Have you seen Game of Thrones? Too, the federal courts are hierarchical, with the Supreme Court at the top and turtles all the way down. No, not turtles, sorry. I meant lower courts. What this means is that when a lower court makes a decision, it can be appealed to a higher court that can either affirm or overturn the lower court's decision.
The second characteristic of the courts is that the hierarchy with the Supreme Court at the top. So with that in mind, if a defendant feels they received an unfair trial, what could they likely do? Appeal to a higher court.
What?
The third feature of federal courts is that they're able to perform judicial review over laws passed by Congress and state legislatures, and over executive action. And the fourth aspect of federal court system is that you should know that the federal judges are appointed for life, and their salaries can't be reduced. This is to preserve their independence from politics. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal. Remember?
Federal judges are elected by the voters and serve 10 years.
Don't they do it lifetime?
They are lifetime, and are they voted?
No.
Yes,
We don't elect them, do we?
No.
they're chosen by
Not
the
us.
president and
The
Remember
Senate
I told you that the
confirms.
legislature makes the laws? Well, that was true, but it's also not the whole story. Legislatures, both state and national, make laws, and these written laws are called statutes. In continental Europe, those are pretty much all the laws they have. Statutes. Statutes everywhere. And statues. That place is filled with art. They had the Renaissance there, you know. But in the US and England, which is where we got the idea, we have something called common law, which consists of the past decisions of courts that influence future legal decisions. The key to common law is the idea that a prior court decision sets a precedent that constrains future courts. Basically, if one court makes a decision, all other courts in the same jurisdiction have to apply that decision, whether they like it or not. The collection of those decisions by judges becomes the common law. I don't have to have a reason to punch the eagle. I should.
What makes common law significant in the United States? It's a law that can only be changed by an amendment to the Constitution. It is common throughout the United States, making the common law more important than statutory law. It refers back to a previous court decision that sets a precedent that other courts must follow. It is an unwritten law that is understood by law officers and judges within certain jurisdictions. C refers back to a previous court decision.
I should probably point out what courts actually do and explain that there are two different types of courts that can make civil law. What differentiates the two types of courts is their jurisdiction, which basically means the set of cases that they're authorized to decide. Trial courts are also called courts of original jurisdiction. These are the ones you see on TV, and they actually do two things. First, they hear evidence and determine what actually happened when there is a dispute. This is called deciding the facts of the case. Not everything that happened or that may be important qualifies as a fact in a court case. Those are determined by the rules of evidence, which are complicated and would really slow down an episode of Law and Order. After the trial court hears the facts of a case, it decides the outcome by applying the relevant law. What law they apply will depend on statutes, and in some cases, what other courts have said in similar situations. In other words, the common law. You might have...
How do courts reach their decisions after determining the facts of the case? They base their decision just on the personal opinions of the judges. They apply the relevant statutory or common law. They consult the state constitution. They ask Mr. Snyder, what he thinks. B?
You might have noticed that I've been referring to courts, not judges or juries, because not all trials have juries. Bench trials have only a judge who determines the facts and the law. Besides, who decides what in a court case isn't really that important. More than 90% of cases never go to court, by the way. They just get settled by lawyers out of court. But say you actually go to court and you lose. Naturally, you'd be upset, especially if you're a sore loser, like me. Shut up. You have it?
What percentage of cases are settled outside of the courthouse? 75, 50, 45, 90?
90.
Going with 90%?
You got it, buddy.
You have a choice. You can give up and go back to your normal, lose your life, or you can appeal the trial court decision to a higher court, an appeals court that has, you guessed it, appellate jurisdiction. Did you actually get that? That'd be amazing. Appeals courts don't hear facts. Who wants those? They just decide questions of law, so you don't have to bring witnesses or present evidence, just arguments. In most cases, if you want to bring a successful appeal, you need to show that there was something wrong with the procedure of your trial. Maybe the judge allowed the jury to hear evidence they shouldn't have heard. Maybe one of the jurors was a cyborg. Here's the way that these courts connect to what I was saying before about common and statutory law. Most common law is made by appeals courts. And because appeals courts have larger jurisdiction than trial courts, appeals decisions are much more important than trial court decisions. So
which court decisions are more important, trial courts or appeals?
Appeals.
Why?
I'm just hoping it's right.
What? This came up, sir.
They, appeals courts, have jurisdiction over a wider group, right? There's less courts, so they have more people. This is the start of the...
So I'm going to talk about the three types of law, and it's going to get confusing. We should probably go to the thought bubble for some nice, compelling, intriguing animations. The two main types of law are basically the Bruce Banner of law. They're the criminal law and civil law. The but they can sometimes morph into the incredible hulk of laws, public law. Public law smash, abuse of government authority. If you watch TV or movies or read John Grisham novels, you're probably familiar with criminal law. Criminal laws are almost always statutes written by legislatures, which means that there's an actual law for you to break. In most states, the criminal laws are called the penal codes. In a criminal dispute, and it's a dispute because the government says you broke the law and you will say you didn't, the government is called the prosecution, and the person accused of committing the crime is called the defendant. Almost all criminal cases happen at the state level.
In a criminal case, the person accused of breaking the law is called
Yeah.
Happens a lot.
No. Never been called a defendant.
I'm gonna get called boy.
I get called, a very white person.
State level, and for this reason, it's hard to know exactly what is or is not a crime in each state. Although murder is a crime everywhere, there are also some federal crimes like tax evasion, mail fraud, and racketeering. If you're suing someone or being sued, you're in the realm of civil law. Civil cases arise from disputes between individuals, or between individuals and the government. When one party, the plaintiff, claims that the other party...
What do we call the person who is complaining, suing in civil court?
Party, the defendant, has caused an injury that can be fixed or remedied. If the plaintiff proves his or her case, the defendant must pay damages. If you lose a civil case, you don't go to prison or jail in most circumstances, but you may end up losing lots of money, and that sucks. I love money. Cases about contracts, property, and personal injuries, also called torts, are examples of civil law. So under certain...
A lawsuit over personal injury or negligence in which a plaintiff wants the defendant to pay them for damages would be considered civil law.
Significant law.
So under certain circumstances, a civil or criminal case can become public law. This happens when either the defendant or plaintiff can show that the powers of government or the rights of citizens under the Constitution or a federal law is involved in the case. Also, if the law gets exposed to gamma rays. Law smash! For example, in a criminal case where the defendant claims that the civil rights were violated by the police, the decision can become public law. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So those are the basics of the court system in the U.S., and you can see that there's a lot to keep straight. There are types of courts, basically trial courts and appeals courts on both the state and federal level. And there are types of laws, basically statutory and common laws. The fact that we have both state and federal statutory law is an example of federalism in action. The U.S., unlike most other nations, has both statutory and common law, but most of the time when we're talking about federal laws, we're in the realm of statutes, or maybe the Constitution. When you study American government, most of the cases you read about are examples of appeals and of public law. How this all works in practice is even more complicated, and the adaptability of the American legal fabric allows statutes to stretch to fit the growing and changing American society, much like Bruce Banner's incredibly elastic pants. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Why is it important for us to have a court system?
Civil beatings.
Well, what happened before?
Civil disobedience.
Well, why did the United States make this system? What happened when we were in the colonies? If you broke the law, if you made the decision, what happened to you? Right? Yeah, I mean the king or whoever the king appointed, you didn't have, like, you weren't protected. This is protection. And if you had a disagreement with somebody, there was nowhere for you to go. Now, we create a civil place. So if you guys wanted to know, because you kind of covered it.
Oh no! Oh, nowhere you lost your pants, oh no! Crash Course Government and Politics is produced.
Nice.
Interesting. So, he kind of covered this though. Usually a civil case doesn't involve you going to jail. It just, you know, me and Sebastian have a disagreement. We go and they might say, Sebastian was right. He didn't let him go to the bathroom that Monday one time. You owe him $10, and I got paid $10 or I could appeal it. But there are cases to where you can actually say you get into a car wreck and you hurt somebody, Well, you're gonna have an actual criminal case as well that you have to go through. But then that person can also sue you in a civil case. You could actually be found not guilty in your criminal case and guilty in the civil case. So you may not have to go to jail, but you still gotta pay the person. So it is two separate cases that don't connect at all. Alright, so now, you guys go, you should be assigned the judicial branch worksheet. So you can go ahead, open that up, and we're gonna work on that. Come on, let's get our heads up. Come on. Oh, we had a nice week to rest. You guys should be ready to go.
I was sleeping on the hardest bed possible. Then it was
I
cold.
sleep on the jail bed, but like, it's in my room. No, we have a jail.
You have a room?
No, we have a jail bunk bed,
I was gonna say, I share a room.
it's like very stiff.
I don't even have one, the other person.
Big Tim always told me, we can't have a room that big.
Big Tim shows you too much love.
I mean, you didn't have a room that big. He gave me the room, but he told me I have to pay the price. We didn't do that. You should do it. Okay, say. You're getting arrested. You have no more rights right now. Can you not? Can you not do that here? Thank you.
What is he yelling, right?
There's no game already. Shut up. All you gotta do is just get candy bar. I gotta play.
So just work on the questions 1 through 10 and do the crossword. I'm not gonna do the bingo.
What?
The last page is like a bingo game, but I'm not gonna do that.
I'm not at that age yet.
The other one.
Federal and state. Is it professors? Is that state? Use those ring tools. Use that. The armor's been in. The questions and the crossword.
Shoot, I gotta shoot that hard.
Shut up. Chris, are you actually answering the questions? Yes. Do you? No. Affirmative. I bet you. I get much sleep in the morning. Chris, you used to say, I don't get sleep in the morning. Can you calm down, please? I'm trying to work. Can you please stay quiet? Negative.
Just make sure you leave your phone. Hurry up.
That's fine. I'm finna get a bus card.
You gotta open it up in the camera.
What was your first blood question? First. Oh, yeah, you remember when no one played that loud wood sound? First, remember the cradle sound? First, remember the cradle sound? I can copy first. It's not real, we had our own. Just try to pay anything, whatever it's called.
Go to sleep.
Negative.
Wow, you gotta work on
Yeah, I wanna go to sleep.
That's a fly. Negative. That's Supreme Court because it's the highest court.
Any of these giving us a problem?
These are really easy questions. All you have to do is read. Right. Well, you can see.
Literally, yes.
The information should be in there. You should have heard a good bit of it at some point today.
If you're talking, we're like, if you're guessing, so.
Alright, Derek, give me one. What's one that's giving you a problem?
6.
Number 6.
Wait, We're not doing a crossword, are you? Yes, we are. Not right now. We answering the questions first. Negative.
All right, here we go. Number 6. If you lose a case in the trial court, what can you do?
It's fine.
Go to jail and live with it.
Oh, take it to a higher court.
The party may appeal.
You can
appeal.
appeal to a higher court.
Oh, see,
You
I
take it to
had
the appeals court.
appeal to.
I couldn't type in that, bro.
Teacher. It wasn't even. He said appeal. To a higher. It's like I started going to light speed. It was made 6 years ago.
So everybody should have 6 right now, right?
Yeah, I got it. I'm sorry. Shut up. No. Champion athletics. I know champion.
Hey, remember, put the phone away.
Sorry, right path.
I need help on number 7.
You're supposed to do that on the computer.
I can do it on here quicker. It won't let me.
I know, but my boss said that they want us to use the computer to have a phone.
Shut up, I already made a pass.
I got you, I'm just letting you know, that's what they're telling us, alright?
I found it.
Yo, how many dudes are in the bathroom right now?
No one, they're just riding, walking around in the hallway.
You serious?
Yeah,
Or to just have a little fun with the boys and stuff.
Bro, it's the first day back, bro.
Walk in the
I gotta
bathroom,
pee.
there's no one there.
Dudes out here looking for females, I'm trying to pee.
Some of them like, you be walking. Hey, look, someone like. Bro,
Nah, that's wild. Pick it up. He was not attempting. Hey, you dropped something. You dropped that.
My little pet is started.
The what? There we go.
Make sure you leave your phone, hurry up, and then when Bowman gets back, I'm just waiting on her.
And then Eminem's coming out of nowhere with Legos. Let me show you the video.
Alright,
You know
so hey, let's try to get to that first sheet in the next 5 minutes, and we're gonna go over that real quick, and then finish up on the crossword.
No way. I'm in diamond. Can you win your first game? What you could put in? Chris, did my ball coming back? Big baby. I need help on number 7.
Number 7?
Yeah.
Alright. So if an appellate court affirms a case, it means so appellate courts can, there's a little graphic here, right? Affirm, reverse, remand. Affirm the trial court's decision, letting it stand, so that it's saying that they are basically saying that the appeal didn't happen.
Oh, so that's what I can put.
What was the outcome is the outcome and it's done. Reverse means they completely disagree with that decision, reverse it. Remand, the case goes back and the trial has to start over.
But what happens if they confirm it?
If they affirm it?
Confirm it, yeah.
If they affirm?
Well, affirm, I meant not confirm.
Affirmative.
Okay.
What did I say wrong?
Ask me again.
What happens if they affirm it? I meant not confirm.
What happens to you if it's affirmed?
Yeah.
Then, I mean, that decision's final. So, like, if you were found guilty, you're still guilty.
If you appealed it and they think that the first court you're in said that's the way it is, that's the way it is.
And that
You
means that-
appealed it and the appeal was of no use because you were guilty to begin.
And the only thing that you can do then is file for another appeal, and that is to go to the Supreme Court. And again, they don't see a lot of cases, so it has to be something that is
If the appeal
very
court
good.
hadn't approved it, you probably, it's wasting money to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Now, what you would see usually what happens is it gets reversed, and then, so you win, so you lose, right? You're guilty. That decision gets reversed. Well, that losing side now, at the appeal level, will appeal and try to take it to the next level because they think that you're still guilty. So when it's kind of split those tiers, there's a chance that you might actually get a shot at, going to the next level. But if the first two courts agree, usually it doesn't go together. But
Does that give you an answer?
Very good.
I say usually because there's always a chance. Alright. There we go. Let's go over the first sheet. The only court the Constitution creates is what? Supreme Court, right? How are the other federal courts created? Who has that power?
Oh, federal and state.
No, those are the two types of, like.
Oh, I thought you just asked that.
So, the Supreme Court is in the Bill of Rights, right? That's how the Supreme Court got made. Was in the Constitution. Now, which one of these two would create the rest of all the courts? Because they just said there's only one Supreme Court of the land, and that's the only court made in the Constitution. So how did all the district courts get created? Help you out here. Congress. Congress creates the rest of the courts. Who's I'm a congressman. I am.
Legislative. I said that. Not before paper. I
did
said
not say
legislative.
anything. He didn't say anything.
I said ledge.
You said so just like you need to be.
It's all good.
A ledge like you get
Alright.
to get with.
So, the two court systems in the United States. What are the two court systems?
Go ahead, Federal and state. Go ahead.
Federal and state.
Yeah, since you want to answer when you ask the question, bro.
Yeah, weirdo.
Now,
They don't tell me that. Like,
what are the two legal cases?
Bugging.
Criminal
Civil.
and civil.
criminal and civil.
What's a criminal? What's a criminal?
Ain't it just one? Well, yeah.
Hmm?
I thought there was only like one person.
So, if it's a
Like
criminal
like
case,
one-
That's not what he
what's
did
the
last
case over?
time.
Crime. So it'd be,
Criminal like one person.
who would be going to court? It'd be who versus who?
The defendant.
Yeah, it'd be whoever broke the law versus the government. So it would be, say, me, I break the law, I go to court. When they read out what it is, it's gonna be the defendant, me, versus, say, the state of Georgia, or the city of Rossville, or the county of Walker County. You know, they'll say who you're going against. If you break federal law, it'll be against the United States.
Stop.
And civil, what's a civil? Civil case is what?
That's
It can be between two people over a disagreement, or it can be against a person and, say, the state.
rights.
Yeah, if I think that my
Violating
rights
the rights.
as an American are being taken away, I can take it to federal court. So, the job of the Court of Appeals is to
Overview cases from the district court.
Do they actually make a judgment on, like, guilty or innocent? What are they really looking at? Is it a retrial, or are they? We are on 4. Are you getting retrial at the appeals court? Are they making that decision, actually having to hear evidence and all that, or are they just looking at the court case? No ideas? Remember, the appeals court is not a retrial, so you're not bringing witnesses and evidence. It is, you are saying something in the case at the trial court level was wrong. They used evidence that shouldn't have been used. Anyways, the trial did not go how it's supposed to. There's something wrong with the trial. So the appeal is just you arguing that. It's just you and the other side arguing that no, my side did it correct. The verdict was completely reasonable because we didn't break any of this, we didn't do any of it, like we were fully confirmed. Or no, I was wrongly convicted because they said A, B, and C and that shouldn't have been allowed, or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But you actually don't have a jury. You're just talking to the judges, and the judges go yay or nay if they see something wrong with the trial. All right, number 5. It's difficult to take a case to Supreme Court because
It's the highest court. And they don't, take many, cases.
I have no idea.
I just go right what I just said. Like,
Yes.
taking my rights.
Yes.
I feel like my rights have been violated. You don't have any.
And what?
You don't feel that.
Alright. So, and we covered this one, if you lose a case in the trial court, you can
appeal to a higher court.
There you go.
I've never been able to do that.
I wonder what
Number 5. It's the highest court, so they only see like major cases. They don't. They kind of let it sort itself out underneath. Alright. So, if an appellate court affirms a case, it means what?
Wait, if you what?
Just do one. Number 6.
Well, we did that when I was in class
Number 7?
already, but hey Derek, help her out.
Number 6.
Let's answer number 6. If
You have to
there's
appeal to a higher
case
court.
in trial court,
Yeah.
you mean what?
Appeal to our court.
Appeal to a
I
higher
only knew that
court.
because I said it.
We literally went over that. I
No, but
asked for that
No,
question.
but you said you know.
That's why I asked you to help her out.
It's
I
not
knew
good
you
that.
knew it.
She was
I
out.
gotta help people in the field though.
Alright, now, y'all wanna help her out with number 7? If
Oh,
appellate court affirms a case, it means what?
What's number 7? Stop laughing.
Number 7 is, it is final.
It means that they are agreeing with the district court.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's not what you said.
So the trial case level, they say, no, that was correct, we're not changing that verdict.
Oh, so it means they're agreeing.
Yes,
The
they agree
final
with the
level.
verdict.
The final level. They are agreeing. They are
Alright.
finalizing.
Number 8, if a law is unconstitutional, the Supreme Court can
Validate legislation. Wait, oh, what did you say? I got reverse. I got invalidate legislation. Where did you find that? You searched it up?
Yeah.
Supreme Court can overturn
Invalidate,
unconstitutional
same thing.
legislation. They can overturn legislation.
Yes.
Which means invalidate.
So, you will see this. This is honestly when you'll usually hear the Supreme Court get involved, is if the president puts an executive order in, which again is, he makes a law without their going through it, they can then of course veto it, but that's the way a president can make a law and it has to go now. Or they make a law, it gets approved, and all of a sudden the Supreme Court can see it, and no, this is targeting like your freedom of religion, you can't have that law, they can change it. Do they review every law? No. How do they make a decision? What has to happen first? Someone actually has to like have something happen to them, so I have to have something happen to me that I then take it to court, and if it's something that is involving those rights that we have, the Supreme Court will make a final decision, and if it is illegal, unconstitutional, they can in fact get rid of the law. Some of the big ones like Brown versus Board of Education, right? That's a big one that the Supreme Court made a verdict and said, yeah, the way that the school system is set up is unconstitutional. You can't have separate schools. Everyone has to be able to go wherever they want. All right. Evidence is used for which one?
All of them.
To prove or disapprove certain facts that would tend to show why.
Can you speak up and speak normal?
Yeah.
Yo,
Okay.
you shut up.
So yes, that is there. And which level do you use evidence? Trial or appellate courts?
I think it's the court trial.
Trial courts.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
where
trial.
you're actually pleading the case and you are presenting evidence and witnesses. In appellate court, you are not. You are just talking about the court case and why the verdict was either right or wrong. A trial with no jury is called?
A bench trial. Wait, no. No. I say that. I'm gonna have to look it up. Trial with no jury. For me, it says a bench trial.
There it is.
Oh, that's what I said at first.
I was searching it up and it loaded.
I can hear you. Oh, that's what I said at first, and it said, "Oh, that's wrong." I didn't
Alright.
say anything to you. Shut up. I wasn't talking to you then.
Alright, so we got 2 minutes. Is there anything on that first page that you guys?
What's the last one?
Bench
Last
trial.
one? No trial.
Bench trial. Yo,
Here we
what
go.
is that?
You want that?
Bro, what is that? It's a mushroom tip. Yo, why would you do that? Respect it, bro. Respect it. Cam, respect it, bro. Yo, Cam, what's wrong with you, yo? Go over there and hand it to him nicely.
I'm not walking all the way over there just to hand it to him.
Do you know what the road are?
How do we feel about
Bro,
the
mushroom
mushrooms now?
You know what it's like?
Better.
Kid, listen.
No, duh.
That's what you played. And find the other creators with
I was like, can't read.
Oh, my granny's poured all the white men back in the day. You know she used to call herself the best living slave, I'll tell you. That's what she called herself.
I'm never gonna listen to again.
My granny's literally said that. My granny said she was the best living slave.
Yeah, I mean, when you pick the worksheet, you just had to.
Who?
We work on the same. We didn't supply
My grandma, no, my she worked for her.
My classroom accidentally closed out of it.
First off, I didn't take my
Teachers, pardon the interruption, but if you have Coach Top for second block, you will meet in the main gym. Coach Top, second block, meet in the main gym. Thank you.
Alright, see y'all tomorrow.